how to know yourself so well that it is impossible to fail. This is the Self-Actualization Made Simple podcast, where I'm joined by my friend Cameron Borthwick. Everyone knows awareness is the first step, but nobody really goes into detail about how to transform from this awareness, nor how to truly know our blind spots, personality, and constructs in order to make this transformation the most permanent, lasting, and radical change that we can make. So in this podcast, we're going to learn how to leverage all of those to make transformation effortless. So if you watch this podcast to the end, you're going to know how to overcome and identify these 3 themes that I just talked about, and then how to apply them to your life right now so that you can overcome blocks and challenges that are affecting you in this moment as you're watching this video. So it's just like one of my clients who was constantly projecting a very tough, successful guy persona, even though he was already quite successful, for there's no reason to be using this overcompensation, right? Well, we learned what his blind spots are. We learned how he was constructing his personality. Then we learned how he was projecting this set of values and these blind spots onto other people, which was just reinforcing the whole cycle, making him feel like if he wasn't to act tough, if he wasn't to act successful, then both of these things would be taken away and he would be challenged. So after seeing these blind spots with compassion and learning the mechanisms, not only of the how, but the why of why he was doing these things, both based on things that had happened to him in the past, but also how he was making sense of things in the present right now. And on top of that, having a real framework of vulnerability where he was able to expose himself more and more to things that made him uncomfortable without making him unsafe. We were able to do all of these things, and now he's able to be in social situations, in work situations, where he would have felt like he was constantly being challenged, questioned, and his authority felt like he was on shaky ground. Now he's able to own those situations in a way which is something which was out of his reality just a few months ago. And if that sounds interesting to you, this is going to be the exact step-by-step breakdown of how to make a transformation like that happen in your life. Enjoy. Obviously, last podcast we talked a bit about my kind of journey. What was the key moments in your journey leading up until now? So for those of you that haven't listened to our first podcast, I really do recommend it, not just for engagement, but I actually think it's really good content out there where you get a lot of our journey, but a bit more, of my journey. So maybe you could watch that for context. I'll put it in the description link below. But I'm interested to hear what your perspective was on our journey. Because obviously I know a lot about my journey, and I tell my journey a lot because it helps a lot of the clients that I'm working with to be like, hey, like, this is where I started from. Here are the parallels with you. It's all good. Like, you're going to be fine. It's very reassuring for a lot of people. It's very reassuring for me to hear it from Pierre, actually.
Yeah.
But I never really heard from you what what were the big milestones in that journey for you? Like, obviously, we started off in a more socializing, but also more pick-up-y background, like with social dynamics, all that kind of thing. And then got introduced to our mentor, Pierre, and our other mentor, Sister Kama. Obviously, that was a big thing, which we went into quite a lot of detail in the last podcast. But what's arising for you when I ask you that?
Well, what's interesting is whenever I speak to people about this, I start at this point, and I'm mostly working with entrepreneurs and business owners. So
Yeah,
I start more with that frame, right? And kind of the story through that lens. And I always talk about, first business did well, and then I started self-sabotaging. And then I
yeah,
got this opportunity to come out with this hypnotherapist with Pierre,
yeah,
right? And Buddhist nun sister. But more recently, I've actually been thinking back to the time that kind of a little bit before that
really.
and the intense period of building that first business.
Ah,
And
right,
I
okay.
think, I think I've been a little bit avoiding it for a while because,
Mm,
you have, especially when you go through the fourth person perspective and you get a
mm,
little bit of that aversion to action and hustle
yeah,
culture, and it's like a bit of a distaste.
yeah,
And that period was the most intense work I've ever done,
really.
by far. And it was the period where I met our mutual friend, Omar,
Mm,
right?
yeah,
And at that time, he was just some guy who slid into my DMs.
yeah,
And I was running a kind of relationship and dating coaching business at the time, but I was basically not running anything. So I had no clients, right? And we got on a call and we connected. And he was like, all right, do you want to work with me? I think I can help you really do this.
Hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, I do. But right now I've got minus £200 in my bank account with an
Nice.
overdraft that extends to 500, but that's still
Yeah.
like not my money.
Yeah.
And that's it. And he's like, okay, well, the program is 4K,
Yeah.
but you can do a 300 pound deposit. And then you can start in January. It was like around November or December at this point. And for whatever reason, I just said yes. And so I
Hmm.
gave like the last of my money.
Mm.
And I didn't have a job at this time. So I go
Really?
looking around, right,
Oh,
where I
yeah.
was, because I was at university, and I go looking around the city that I'm in. And I do all these interviews. I did this interview for a hat making company, like cricket helmets,
Yeah.
right? Imagine me doing that. I have really shaky hands.
Yeah,
And
dude.
I screwed up the interview so bad. They sent me a rejection letter, then later said that they accidentally weren't meant to send that. Right? It was very weird. But
Really?
I ended up working at Tesco's of all places, doing the
Oh, yeah.
picking, right, where you pick up online shopping.
Okay, yeah.
And I I'm not a good work person when it comes to working for someone,
Mm.
but I hated that so
Oh,
much.
of course, yeah.
And I'm also not a morning person. And this started at 3 a.m. And so my day for about, it was 6 days a week, and it was for about 3 months I did this.
Mm.
It was 3 a.m. to 1 p.m. doing the picking, right,
Oh,
doing the online shopping, which was hell. And it was with
that's a
during
massive
COVID.
shift.
It's a hell of a shift.
That's a 10-hour shift.
And you don't go home until all the things have been picked. So sometimes it extended to 2 or 3 p.m. Sometimes like everyone's in a row when you hit 11 a.m. and
Yeah.
those days feel amazing. But that was quite rare.
Yeah.
And it was so 6 days a week. It was like 3 months I did this. And it was also during COVID, so you have to go with a mask and you're not allowed to talk to anyone. So that'd be unprofessional. But you're also not allowed to have headphones in because you're on the shop floor. So you're doing this the most mundane task
Yeah.
and you have nothing to entertain yourself apart from thinking. Or you
Yeah.
can just think for like 6 hours.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was into affirmations. So I would just say these affirmations again and
Yeah.
again and again
Yeah.
and put myself into like this crazy trance. And that was the only thing that kind of kept me going through it. But anyway, so I'd do 3 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then I would do this coffee nap where you down an espresso shot. Then you have like a 20-minute nap. And then basically once you finish the nap, the espresso shot kicks in. You
Okay.
know, we're talking peak 3.5 orange stage
Yeah.
productivity here, right?
Productivity have. Yeah.
That's right. And then from then, I would work on the business till about 5, 6 p.m. And then I would have to do like an hour of uni work to make sure they knew I was like still there. Then I would go to bed, do it all again.
Yeah.
And that period was so intense.
Yeah.
But because I also got the success from it, I was able to work with Omar, I was able to get clients
Yeah.
and actually build that business and do really well in the first 3 months. It kind of gave me that ability to really trust that if I just really go hard for 2 to 3 months,
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I think just having that in your back pocket, which I know you do and I know Pierre does, really it gives a weird sense of security that I think you need
Yeah.
when you're doing this entrepreneurship life.
Yeah.
And so then when the business actually did well, I was able to quit that job and that was
Yeah.
amazing.
I bet.
But apart from, I kind of had that initial momentum for like 3 months where I did really,
Mm.
really well. And then because I wasn't operating from real fear anymore, I kind of had like a little bit of security. I had some money after like 3 really good months,
Yeah.
like the most money I'd ever made, that I just stopped doing all the important tasks
Yeah. That's
and I just
classic.
started faffing. The
Yeah.
self-sabotage hit. I just procrastination was
Yeah.
crazy. And
Yeah.
then, it kind of like survived a little bit on the earlier work, but it just went down to zero.
Mm.
And, over that period, I was really fortunate that Omar actually introduced me to Pierre. That's how I met him,
Wow.
of all ways, which is really crazy. And so when I was going through this journey, I was listening to him. I was loving what he was saying. I was really into the work he was speaking about. And then when it kind of went to zero, he started offering some opportunities. And I think it was the thing we both did where we were doing the DM setting for him for a little bit. I
Yeah.
don't know if you did that.
Yeah.
And so that was my first kind of entry into working for him and helping him out.
Hmm.
And then I got that opportunity, obviously, to come to Poland, to be
Yeah.
trained and coached by him, to, have this experience where we had this amazing coach, amazing, hypnotherapist,
Hmm.
um, and then also sister doing
Yeah.
all her shenanigans.
Yeah. Yeah. They were shenanigans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we went through that 2-year journey and we kind of covered a lot of that, I think, last time.
Hmm.
So I don't need to go over it too much. But I'd say those are the key points, right? We had that experience of just being very young and just being trained by two very intense people
Yeah.
and
Who
seeing
just
what
added
happens when you do
intensity to
that.
each other. Yeah.
Yeah, they just fueled the fire.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people, I mean, I'm sure it's the same for you that I work with. The thing that's missing a lot of the time is people who get into this work, they usually, their mind has served them well. They've got they've had a good job or they have a good job. They have friends, they have a life which is nice and is good. But that thing that's missing is like the period that you talked about where when the chips were down and it was something to follow something they really loved, did they take that risk or not? Now, I'm not here to say whether it makes you a better or worse person for taking that risk. What I am here to evaluate, though, is saying that, well, if you've made that decision to not take whatever the risk is in your life, so for you, it would be giving that €300 or £300 extra of overdraft when you didn't have the money and then having to figure it out later. If you've never done that before, some version of that, then this relationship with yourself, a lot of the thing that comes up in my clients and my sessions is this feeling of not fully being able to trust yourself. And it's kind of a leap of faith because yeah, if you've never done it before, then logically, like your mind's going to be like, yeah, I can't trust myself. But then you have to at some point take that leap or take that step in order to be able to have that evidence that you do trust yourself. So it requires that leap of faith. And if you've never done that, if you've always taken the more comfortable option or the more sensible option, there is something almost always that's lacking in the self-actualization journey and for you, for the clients that you work in their business journey, in whatever it is that you decide to do. And that thing that's lacking is almost that certainty. Because it's being okay with uncertainty, because you can be okay with uncertainty a lot of the time because you've been in really uncertain times and you've just figured it out. You've just done
Yeah,
what needs to be done.
yeah,
Yeah.
sure. And
But it's something which, if I can just say this, is something
yeah, go
which
on.
it's kind of like a hard thing for people to understand in the beginning because you can't understand it. It doesn't make sense. Like what I'm saying does not make sense, really. It's like, what do you mean you have to like can't you just like play always the logical thing and do the thing which gives you the most probability of doing something? Yes, that has a place and that's how we should be operating like in most day-to-day kind of life. But there's a point where taking a risk and throwing caution to the wind is the most probable outcome, but you can't know that until you're over the hill, until you've done it. Is that something that comes up a lot in your clients as well?
You know what's interesting when you were sharing that? And there was a few things that arose. First of all, I'm noticing, I think that would be really hard to do when you're at, let's say, like 4.0. It
Yeah,
almost like being in a little bit of a blissful 3.5, just like the external is like all I need.
yeah,
You know, like it's
yeah,
so good. You haven't
yeah,
like really questioned it.
yeah,
So the risk really makes sense
yeah,
because you're
because
not
it's be
questioning it
or
so
end all.
much.
Yeah,
And so what's interesting is I have a full variety of clients that some of them probably relate to that for sure. But a few of them, and a good chunk of them, because they went so heavy on their 3.5,
hmm,
right? They're, business guys, entrepreneurs.
yeah,
They don't have that so much. They have almost the opposing of they've always taken risk and gone
yeah,
for it, that they can almost struggle to chill and relax and
yeah.
actually just
And that's the
like
hardest thing.
enjoy
Yeah.
life, you know?
Yeah, it's like when you're doing all the intense stuff, if you've been doing that for such a long time, then suddenly the path of most resistance is to just chill out and not do anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you know how I think about most of that?
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember, when we were exploring the kind of social freedom stuff and
Yeah.
really playing with all of that. And because we'd always come to each other for advice as
Yeah.
more peers, and
It was
obviously
our
we
only
had,
safe space,
it was the only safe
basically.
space. And I remember
Yeah.
the questions were often, do you think I need to lean into more intensity?
Oh
That
my
that
God.
kind of tone, right? You wouldn't say exactly that. And I'm
When you're in
like,
a blind spot, it's so funny to look at the blind spot from the outside. So
yeah,
don't be hard on yourself, guys, if you feel like you keep on seeing the blind spot, or you
mm,
see a blind spot and you've overcome it, because I've been there, done that. I mean, Cameron's been there and done that as well. For those of you that aren't
yeah,
following, basically the trends that happened when me and Cameron were working together was I was always doing like super intense, to put it in a nice way, super intense stuff. To put it in a not so nice way, it would probably be described as very abrasive and very, how would you describe it? There's another word for abrasive that I'm looking for. Very, maybe kind of rude, I think it would be fair to say.
maybe rude. It's just you always just in general leaned into like the most intense of
Right.
anything you did, both in how your personality was, in the career you chose initially.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
just life was like intensity was the default choice
Yeah.
all the time,
To put it like
you
that.
know?
So Cameron put it in a much more eloquent way than I did, because he was living with this person for basically 2 years. And it just goes to show you that you can't really self-diagnose your problems until you get to a
Mm,
certain stage, right? And even
yeah,
then, it's just much easier to outsource it to people. That's why me and Cameron still work with mentors as well,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because for me, in this instance, I was doing all this stuff that Cameron was saying, and then at the same time being insecure that I wasn't being out there enough. And that if anything went wrong, it was because I held back and I wasn't unapologetic enough. Okay. Yeah. So this
Oh my
was
gosh.
my kind of issue. And then, yeah, it was basically for that whole 2 years period, it was just a chilling out process, which speaks to your
Mm,
point. Whereas for Cameron, for those people that were wondering, I remember a really distinct time was when we were living in Budapest at the time. And there's this basilica on the Pest side of Budapest. And we were doing
yeah.
hypnotherapy at the time. It wasn't shadow work, it was hypnotherapy at the time. And Cameron had a massive breakthrough. It was something along the lines of he didn't have to be so reactive to his internal world. Like his internal world didn't have to, like everything that's something, there was a slight contraction or a slight unrelaxation. Let me know if I'm getting it wrong. That wasn't a whole issue that we had to go into.
Yeah.
And I remember
Yeah.
that was actually a big
Sure.
turning point for you.
Yeah. 100%. You
Yeah.
know, the internal world for me and how I related to states was just very much like if I'm in a really nice state, oh great, it was kind of like my real achiever mind hijacked it a little bit.
Yeah.
Where I was like, I'm winning, I'm doing good, I'm doing the right thing if my states are good. And if I'm feeling bad or have a small contraction or just kind of any kind of internal slightly negative feeling, that's really, really bad. Right. Which would also make just the really bad feelings worse
Yeah.
and would make the positive feelings, I'd really cling to them
Mm.
and just make more stories about them. And that
Yeah.
was a huge, huge turning point because, I was living on this path of trying to live in a perfect state all the time, and that not being in that was a bad thing. Which, if anyone's ever done state
Yeah.
work or meditation, knows that clinging, craving, or aversion to states does not help you be in
No,
beautiful states. And
it does
some
not.
might say it hinders that,
Yeah.
which
Some
is
might
definitely
say.
what I experienced, some might say. And so
Yeah.
that kind of, that's the content, but the process you were describing of having blind spots that for me, I'm just living in that world, trying to master this world, but this world is so small and it needed a help to go beyond that, to
Hmm.
see that. And for you, it seemed like the same thing of, oh, actually, I don't need to just keep maxing out this
Yeah.
because that's not even what I need to get the holistic picture of what I want.
Yeah. So most likely for people watching this, the problem that you're experiencing, the solution is something which you haven't even thought about. Because if it is something you thought about, then it wouldn't be a problem in the same way. Is essentially what you can learn from these two stories. So for me, because the insecurity was overcompensation, intensity, being unapologetic, that was me. Okay. If that's the insecurity, then the only path is by doing that more. Whereas the actual thing, the blind spot, which I couldn't see, was, well, it's this whole fixation of this in general, which is the problem. And once that fixation goes, then you can have more breadth about what the actual issue is. And for Cameron, it's the same thing. It's like, oh, but if I just manipulate my internal world so much so that I'm always feeling good, then that's the solution, right? When in reality, it's something
Right.
which he hadn't even considered, which was, oh, but it's this fixation on what feels good and what feels bad, which is the issue in and of itself. So if you're having a problem listening to this and you're trying to figure it out on your own, the reason why that hasn't happened yet is because it's something which is completely outside of your ability to comprehend. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a problem. It doesn't mean that you're not smart enough to comprehend it. It doesn't mean that you're not aware enough to comprehend it. But until you have a real, like half a decade in internal work, and that whole half decade is you learning from the correct mentors and not having any of the community project onto you, and you create introjections from that, which happens in most of the content that I see out there, unfortunately. It is actually really unfortunate, to be honest with you, because people that are teaching it, they're not doing it out of maliciousness, obviously. Maybe one or two of them are. I haven't seen any of those, but you can't deny the fact. But most of the time, it's just because of how it's being taught. It's such a subjective thing that it's so hard to separate our own subjective world from the reality of what's happening in someone else, which is why you have to use a lot of clean language when you teach this stuff or when you do this work. But if it's something which is a real problem and it's been a problem for years, the solution is not like I'm going to outthink this. That would have happened by now. It has to be completely stepping outside of the paradigm and then dissolving it.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
why it's so frustrating because you feel like you're
It's
doing
so
so much
annoying.
stuff. You're like, oh yeah, I can just meditate out of this. I can do this belief introject, and it might be moving things in the right direction. But until you have that awareness to really look at yourself from the outside in, or have somebody do it for you, it's just not going to shift. Or if it does, it'll just be by luck, unfortunately. Because even when we were doing this to each other all the time, like we were practicing this every hour of every day for this
By
2 year.
necessity.
Yeah, by necessity, we had to because it's a very challenging environment for us, especially when you're young as well. Like
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much of a factor that made, obviously because you're only the age that you are. But looking back at it, you're
Yeah.
like, when you're super young, you're so impressionable. And when I
Mm.
say young, I don't mean like 15 years old. I mean like early 20s. You're so
Yeah.
impressionable.
Yeah.
Um, which is why we needed to do that all the time. So we were practicing this basically 24/7, like 7 days a week. Not because we're just grinding and we just want to be the
We're
best,
just
but
hustling,
because we
boys.
had to. If we didn't do that, it would have been a really, there would have been some really unpleasant moments. But even with all of that, it still took us how long to uncover these blind spots when the other person could see the blind spot? Because that's the other
Yeah.
thing. Even when the other person can see it, you can't really point it out. Like I have, there's this one, oh my God, there's this one client who I work with who's great, but he always says, yeah, just call out what I'm saying and call out my projections, that kind of stuff. So I'm like, okay, cool, and I do, and they're like, oh yeah, thank you for that, but I don't really think that's the reason. It's like you can't you can't call
Yeah.
it out,
Yeah.
until somebody is ready, until they come to it on their own volition. Um,
Yeah.
which is another
That's so
frustrating part of it as well.
oh dear, that's
Which is
so
also
funny.
when you try and to have advice to friends or convince them of something, it's just not going to happen. People are just, you can't move somebody's consciousness. They can't even move their consciousness, really, you know?
Yeah. That's a tough thing to try and do.
Yeah, it's an impossible task.
I'm also curious because we spoke about moments, that moment for me, and that moment for you, that's what, 4 years ago now. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
like a long time ago.
a long time
Have you
ago.
have you had any recent ones?
Recent one where I just changed my perspective. I
I'm
can't think
happy
of anything.
to go first if you
Yeah,
want a
go
little time
first.
to
Go for
think.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. And mine was actually more recently in working with Kim,
Okay.
right? And so he does the
Mm.
transcripts and has been helping me get better and better at the work I'm doing. And
So what that
I
means is
remember,
your mentor's going through your transcripts of your
yeah,
calls and making sure that.
that's right. Let's help people actually understand what we're saying about. The great thing about this is it literally is friends chatting and enjoying this and exploring this. The bad
Yeah.
thing is that, at least for me, I'm probably under explaining many, many things.
Yeah, it's okay.
So
Yeah.
we'll get better at it.
It's all right.
But
In the
anyway,
comments, you can shout at Cameron. Don't worry.
that's
This is a
right. Just
safe
shout at
space
me.
for you
It's
to
all
vent
good.
your frustration to
Yeah,
Cameron.
that's right. It's a safe place. Anyway, so it took until like the 10th month, and it was definitely getting better and better. But there was just this one breakthrough where he kept saying, "You're slowing them down, right?
Mm,
Just let them do it. Let them do the work." I'm like, I'm not slowing them down, King.
yeah.
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
And what I really realized is I had been so focused on doing shadow work,
Mm,
but I wasn't letting the light do the work.
interesting.
Every session I would start with kind of the old hypnotherapy, what's the problem?
Yeah.
And that's how I would run a session. What's problem, solution, give them a little bit of stuff to do. We make amazing breakthroughs. That's cool. But since that session, I just started leading with the light that they already had,
Mm,
right, from previous work we've done. And my clients have been doing way better just from that, and me too. And it was such a huge blind spot, but I couldn't see it for 10 months, even with, in my opinion, one of the best
Yeah.
shadow work facilitators on the planet, helping me out, helping me
Psychotherapist
see
too.
it. But
Yeah.
that changed so much for me.
Yeah.
And it was just like finally getting it, and everything just flows so much more smoothly.
Hmm.
But before that, I just couldn't even see it. I didn't even realize that reality existed.
Yeah.
I was so stuck in just shadow work, shadow work, shadow work.
Yeah. That's an interesting. So, for those of you that don't know, one of the big formative mentors in hypnotherapy for us was this guy called Scott Jansen, who has still probably one of the best frameworks of hypnotherapy out there.
Yeah.
Um, I would say it might be almost so streamlined that it's difficult for people to do because
Mm,
people, if you remember people in that training, they also had to be told a lot by Scott, like, you're saying too much, you're doing too much, like, stop talking, basically.
yeah,
You've got to let this person have
for
the breakthrough
sure.
by themselves. But it's almost that old NLP hypnotherapy frameworks, which have a lot of value. And I'm sure a lot of people watching this have at least heard of that or tried some of it. But it's so problem orientated. In fact, we're actually told to not talk about the problem. We're told like we just have to talk about the problem and get curious about that. But if I'm understanding this right from what you're saying, people already have a lot of potential in them. They already have a lot of openness in them, especially if they're getting on a call with us. It means they really are committed to like figuring this out. So there's already a lot there. So it's almost like nurturing that and allowing that to grow and then seeing how that changes the dynamic. Is that correct? What you're saying?
It's definitely a big aspect of it. It's also just when I'm working with someone for 6 months, 9 months,
Yeah.
and let's say we get that kind of classic ESR breakthrough where they've removed an interject. ESR is evolution of shadow resolution by Kim Barter. It's a really amazing model for shadow work.
Yeah.
And you get that classic release of an interject and the light emerges, right? And then you're meant to do the embedded practice. Well, I've just been pushing that light in a non-pushing way with
Hmm.
clients. And just that on its own for the next 4, 5, 6 weeks has drastically changed like 5 or 6 different areas of their life
Wow.
and the way they're constructing it in their mind as a whole. Like I've had many clients, especially more recently, start just operating from more of this witness place,
Mm.
right? From like the classical meditation style. And they're just almost getting to states that we might have played with in Twim, where they're just
Mm.
really able to see things very clearly and not getting engaged so much. It's
Yeah.
happening really organically, just from being with the light.
Yeah.
And so that's been extremely exciting to just see where does that go. And I think it was also a shift in mentality of I don't necessarily see it as if we break a shadow, right? I don't know why I'm doing like this, but it's not like an equivalent up trajectory. See what I mean? Like if a
Mm.
shadow is this big, it's not like it just grows, the light is this big. It's
Yeah.
almost like the light is just this.
Yeah.
Like it's so big in so many areas and so much possible height as well.
Hmm.
It took, I kind of knew that. We've had mentors who would say things like that before, but it took a while for that to really click and to see how powerful just that can be.
Yeah. So what would you say to somebody listening to this and has a problem in their life which they can kind of identify the symptoms of,
Mm.
but they've maybe been struggling it for a while, a few months, maybe even a couple of years. Let's be honest, that's pretty possible too. how would they use what you just talked about to make their process a little bit easier?
Yeah. So, what I would invite them to explore, they probably have a part of themselves or an ego state around this problem that has maybe a higher perspective or a higher way of seeing it than the rest of their mind who are really in the problem,
Yeah.
right? Or it may not even be experienced as a part with any thoughts, but it may just be they can notice there is a little bit of a light around the problem,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then just simply noticing that, whether it's a part, whether it's just a simple state of emotion,
Mm-hmm.
and just really nurturing that, not getting sucked into the problem, but just nurturing the light that is there. Right, breathing into that. That's one of the easiest things. And it's very real to just physically breathe into it. Breathe in, nurture, and celebrate it. And if we struggle with the word celebration, which a surprisingly amount of clients do have,
Yeah.
appreciation sometimes works better. Or just
Yeah.
appreciate that. And more often than not, you will notice that this light, or is it just a state, or whether it's a part or quite similar, will just often grow and
Mm.
deepen. And if it's somatic at first, that's fine. Just let it be somatic, or sensorial or emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And you might just become curious as it gets stronger, right? You don't want to rush it. Just as it gets stronger, you might just get curious what lens and thinking emerges from this. How does this view the world, be growing and developing?
Mm.
And you don't need to bring it back to the problem straight away, right? You can just explore, well, actually, when I'm operating from this place, this deep sense of confidence, I see myself as really worthwhile. And I see myself as inherently valuable, right? And as this gets stronger and stronger and stronger, you can invite it to explore the original problem.
Mm.
And you might find there's new perspectives, new ideas. And you just play with that, grow that, nurture that. And then when that problem inevitably drops away, don't stop,
Mm.
you know? So what else is there? We're not just here to solve problems.
Mm.
What can emerge from this? Look how beautiful and powerful that is.
Yeah.
How wonderful that is. That's you.
Mm.
And then let's just get curious. What happens if you celebrate that and allow that to grow as it wants to? Allow that to deepen.
Mm.
Allow it to broaden into whatever areas of your life it wants to. Allow it to go higher if it wants to. And allow it to be done both somatically, right, by feeling, but also cognitively,
Mm.
exploring the view that continues to emerge, and also any symbols too.
Mm.
And you may find that just being with that, just allowing that to grow for your practice for the next few weeks, sometimes even months, may change your life so drastically
Mm.
as that becomes a bigger and bigger part of yourself. And then if something new emerges, let that come too. They're just like waves emerging,
Mm.
allowing them to fully reach their peak, come down, and then allowing the next one to emerge.
Yeah.
I'm curious if anything is arising for you as we explore this. Any ideas you have too?
I think that's a really valuable exercise for people to tap into. I would recommend going through again and maybe doing that as a bit of a guided meditation. Because if you can do that with one thing, then these distinctions between parts of us are all just projected. Like there's not any actual divides within us. If there was, then we wouldn't be able to access it. Because I can't access Cameron's parts. I can just access myself. So if you can do that with one area, then there's no reason that you can't do it with all of the others. Because it's all part of the same consciousness. So by doing it with one area, it actually enables us to make it possible to change in all areas. That's why once you get one breakthrough, it's like that's when the coaching really starts. You know, like one
Yeah.
breakthrough, and then that's when people start getting exponential progress.
Yeah.
Because the way you make breakthroughs is the same. It's almost like a skill. But to answer your question to begin with, which was, has anything new happened for me in terms of breakthroughs that I've made, that kind of thing? The other funny part of this is that the way that you create problems for yourself is also the same. It gets more complex, but it's also the same. More complex because you kind of need to put more barriers and be like, oh yeah, but this is an exception. So for people maybe that have been going through or having a good time or had maybe even made some breakthroughs, anytime you catch yourself making an exception, oh yeah, but this time it's different. Like this time, this problem really is real.
This is real.
Yeah, this is
You're wrong.
real.
This is real.
Then that's like a really clear sign, basically, that something is going wrong. But for me, can't actually remember any of the. Unfortunately, I never really had a breakthrough in terms of my own practice, in terms of like a big one that I can remember. But when it comes to coaching, what I have seen, similar to what you're saying though, is you shouldn't really get in the way of the flow of someone else's consciousness and how it's coming up. Like whatever is unfolding right in front of you at that moment. The moment I tried to like systematize it or like do NLP stuff or like back in the day or like say, oh yeah, but I got to get them back on track. That was always the period, or there was always like the part of the call which was just super unnecessary. It wouldn't necessarily be harmful, although I guess it could be, but it'd be more in the sense of getting in the way of somebody's progress. And the reason why I wanted to bring that up is because when we are doing this work, so for people that you talk to, it would be getting over blocks in business. For me, it's people self-actualization in general. When we're doing this work, it's so easy to get lost in the fact that, wow, I just completely lost my train of thought. What was I speaking about again?
You're just allowing clients'
Allowing, yeah.
conscience to just unfold.
So now I remember when you're doing this stuff, a lot of the time you're running into issues because you're not allowing yourself to unfold. There's a part
Mm.
saying, oh no, we can't do that, or what about this? And there's a fear about judgment and all that kind of stuff. So what Cameron did there, which was really cool, it was allowed and facilitated a space for you to just let something unfold naturally. That's kind of my thoughts on what you just went through.
Yeah, I think it's really vivid, perfect words for it.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, did you notice the big difference when you were able to do that even more in the work of your own clients?
Yeah, like everything is it's when you get out of your own way too.
Yeah.
Like when you are getting in your own way, it's going to be really tough for you to help somebody else.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Like one of the guys I'm doing work with is also a coach or a shadow work facilitator, should I say. And he was able to get a lot of his clients in person because we did like a retreat together where we were able to work on all this kind of stuff socially. A lot of it was social, to be honest, because that's the thing which is tougher to help with over the phone. It's kind of better to do a retreat with. And he's the same person as he was before that. Like it's not like he's a different person now. Like his name is different and he identifies in a different way. But when, like for socializing, an example, when you're getting in your own way, that's the real issue. Like when people say, "Oh, just be yourself," what I think they really mean is like stop getting in your own way
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
bad beliefs. Like when someone says just be yourself, and someone says, "Oh, but myself isn't attractive or myself isn't confident," right? Well, that doesn't happen out of nowhere. If you have a belief about, if you form a belief that you're not attractive and you're not confident, then that is you getting in your own way. So you have to get rid of that. And then obviously there's some communication stuff and how to kind of present yourself in a presence way. But it's why that stuff is really valuable, because as soon as he was able to not get in his own way, that's when he started getting clients from just talking to people in the place where he was living. He was living in like a co-working spot, so kind of like a hotspot for that kind of thing. So yeah, once you get out of your own way, it makes things much easier because then you have no reason to get in the client's way. But if you're getting in your own way, a client has a similar trigger to you, suddenly you get triggered. It's like, what am I supposed to do here? You know?
That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what was happening when me and Cameron were in Budapest, just triggering each other when we were doing hitting the therapy on each other.
Oh dear, yeah. We definitely did a fair amount of that. But there was also plenty of other triggers to go around. We didn't have
Ah,
to worry
yeah.
about
There was
that.
no worry about if there wasn't enough triggers coming, you
We
know?
had the material
Yeah.
and we had willing um, clients, let's say,
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. What's coming up for you now? I feel like we talked about a bunch of stuff. Is there anything else that's coming up for you?
I wrote down a really funny question.
Okay.
And when you were speaking, I was just like, I accidentally opened these kind of like little questions and curiosities I had.
Yeah.
And I just saw this one.
Okay.
And when you were speaking, it completely sidetracked me. And I was like, don't laugh. And then when I
Okay.
try and make myself not laugh, I just really wanted to laugh.
Okay.
But anyway, okay,
Guys, start flaming Cameron in the chat right now. You have 100% have
so
my
you
permission.
have 100% permission.
Yeah.
The other day, right, I was watching YouTube and it was just like this one of his random videos. It was like toughest British pubs, and it's like one in Scotland, right? And it just cuts to this old proper geezer who's a bit of a large fella,
Okay.
and like you can imagine a bartender who's done it for 50 years or something like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I just noticed the thought in me of like, that looks nice. I wonder what that life is like, you know?
Okay.
And
What made you put that as a curiosity on our
so
self-actualization podcast?
so here's the curiosity, because I was also in the same week having a discussion, and with this program I've been doing, I've been able to be in contact with some people like a really high developmental level,
Yeah.
right? Like really into meta here. And I remember we were speaking about it, and he was like, "Yeah, sometimes I just have that craving to like just be a cleaner, right? Or just do something that's more mundane, right?
Okay.
Just like a more regular job,
Yeah.
you know?" And so the curiosity was, first of all, do you ever just want to be a bigger bartender, big boy?
A big boy, a geezer.
And do you relate to that kind of subtle desire sometimes emerging of just living a normal existence without trying to be? grow or be special or even develop, right? Do you
Mm.
ever experience that at all?
I don't
Maybe
think
it's
I
just
do.
me.
I can understand the question where you're coming
Yeah.
from. I don't just want to shut it down at all. But I guess I would say from my perspective, it seems like maybe it could be a golden projection on that kind of life.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
When I think about it with any sense of like thought, it
Yeah.
just gets instantly shut down.
Yeah.
But the emerging idea, first of all, is funny in
Yeah, it's
general,
funny.
just for me to think, oh, I want to be a fat pub man.
That's right.
Okay.
Welcome to the comedy podcast, guys.
But also, there is that sense of not being so worried about who you are, in the sense of it doesn't matter that much anymore.
Yeah.
You're not clinging to being some amazing shadow or hypnotherapist facilitator or being a good entrepreneur
Hmm.
or even being in like the perfect relationship, right?
Yeah.
Not clinging to any of these things of any really identifiers and just existing,
Yeah.
you know. I think that's the real, not necessarily craving, but almost for like curiosity. And in sense, it's probably that, like you said, golden projection of
Hmm.
freedom from those subtle constraints of what you should be or aiming towards or growing towards.
That's really interesting. Do you know what's coming up for me? I'm curious to see what's coming up for you. Could this have something to do with the fact that if we were to put you into the Enneagram system, you'd be an achiever?
It might be that. I was thinking about the Enneagram a lot this week. That was
Yeah,
another
so have
question I
I.
have,
Yeah. And
It's, yeah, go on.
well, Enneagram, there's a lot of problems with personality tests, obviously, because typing is
Yeah.
quite limited. But how at least how we use them is they're as useful maps that can maybe place somebody in a relevant way. Obviously, there's a lot of times where it's not very relevant, but in certain things about just how maybe just explaining to people how their cognitive functions work, basically what their mind then naturally tends to lean into rather than not lean into. But with Enneagram, it's really funny because it's a really good map and general placement to kind of map where people's motivations and desires and maybe a core part of their identity is formed. Now we have all of the personalities in us. Whatever personality test you have, we have all of them in us. That's just the reality of human consciousness and a million more. So I'm actually having a hard time explaining it right now, but there is functionality to it as a map, but I'm not quite sure how to explain
Yeah.
that, but that's not the main part. But with Enneagram, there's a type 3, which is the achiever, which if you were to place Cameron into, would be Cameron. For me, it'd be more of a type 8, which would be the
Yeah.
challenger, which if you wanted to talk about my blind spots, makes perfectly sense because the challenger is known as this like just say it how it is, all that kind of stuff, like
Mm.
has a big need for power and control and is and afraid of losing that. So obviously my overcompensation is to be more abrasive and to be a bit more intense, especially back in the beginning. Now for Cameron, he can probably explain it a lot better than me, but for the achiever, it's being valued for the achievements that you've made. So you can be it's almost like putting on like a ton of different masks. Is that correct, right? Is that fair to say? Or how would you describe it?
Yeah, I think the achiever, and when you were sharing it earlier, I think a great way of viewing it is just basically just how you're constructing identity or reality
Yeah, your
rather than
primary
even a
one, right?
personality test. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so I think the achiever has tendency towards trying to create a perfect identity, right? A perfect mask in some
Yeah,
ways,
exactly.
which
Bit of a
definitely
tall order,
arises.
right?
Bit of a hard challenge, but we do try.
Yeah,
We do our
yeah.
best.
You do try very
We
hard.
can't say
Yeah,
we don't try. And we
yeah,
can't say you don't try when it comes to the power and conflict.
yeah, yeah. I
You,
definitely did my fair share of trying. You could definitely say that.
That is true.
Funny enough, let me just say this before I forget. I realized that a big part of the reason why I used to do that abrasive stuff and push intensity to the max is because when I was feeling uncomfortable, I knew that if I pushed the intensity, I would feel more comfortable than the other person most of the time. So it was actually a defense mechanism.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, oh, I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable here. Let me just push it a bit to the max so the other person feels more uncomfortable than me because it's all like power dynamic going in. It wasn't malicious or anything like that. It's just like a protection mechanism. But like we were saying, it's actually interesting because what your kind of weird golden projections, not yours, but like in general, what person, I'm not saying your projections are inherently weird,
I
like
just
more
have
weird
weird
than
ones.
anyone else.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just super weird.
But with golden projections, what's really interesting is you can actually, for those of you who are still listening to this podcast, you can look at it in a way of they can reveal, if you were to reverse engineer them, what your constraints are. I'm not sure if you even realized you said this when you said it. And obviously, I'm not turning this into a coaching session at all. But when you were saying, oh, yeah, like, do you ever have this like fantasy around like just being a normal person because you can get rid of those subtle constraints? This was literally the words that you said.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
remember saying this. I remember thinking this in my mind. That's really funny because I don't have those constraints at all. And
That's really interesting.
it's not because I don't like I'm better than you, right? Although Karen is taking coaching from me, right?
That's right. I'm gonna be paying him for this afterwards.
Yeah, no, obviously that's a joke. But I was like, oh, that's really interesting. But then like I recently just had this not recently, but a couple of months ago, I had this situation where I was traveling around. There was a girl I was not even really dating. We just been on a few dates, you know, shared something intimate. And then I said I was leaving and I didn't know when I was coming back. So she started dating someone else, which is fair enough, right? I'm leaving. Guys, not only was I just leaving, I was leaving the continent. Okay. And I wasn't coming back, right? But then I decided I was going to come back. And she's like, oh, I met this person, this, and this. Is everything going to be okay? I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem, all that kind of stuff. But then I had a really funny Enneagram 8 shadow come up around how is it going to be perceived? Was I going to be perceived as weak or all this kind of stuff? Whereas I know for a fact with Cameron, this thought would not have arisen for him at all. Maybe it would have been something else. I don't know. Maybe he'd been in a situation like that, but it wouldn't have been around the dynamics of being seen as tough or powerful or brave or like the leader in charge or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
these constraints are just not there as much. Whereas the same way that you were saying this normal thing, the golden projection, like it's so funny because I was trying really hard to see the perspective and I could see the perspective, but it didn't have any effect on me. I was like, well, I kind of am just living a normal life. A little bit different, but I am kind of just living a normal life. So actually, for people listening to this, if you can see the kind of even the silly things that you're kind of idolizing, they give you really good clues about the next issue if you wanted to look at
For
it that way,
sure.
or just looking at the way which how you're constructing reality. Because when you can see how you're constructing reality with real wisdom, then it has less power over you. I'm interested to hear what's coming up for you when I say all of that.
Yeah, I mean, this is perfect way to see the Enneagram. Like if you're viewing it as this is my personality, this is what like I'm just an Enneagram 3. We're the achievers, you know,
Yeah.
or we're just the eights. We're like the tough guy, like the leaders, right?
Yeah.
It just gets you more stuck. But it's
Yeah.
just the most wonderful map for just tones of constructs. You know, like not being super rigid of this is your construct, but just kind of tones of it. You know, like, oh, a lot of my clients who are Enneagram threes have similar kind of tones, similar shades of how their constructs might arise through also their own different lenses, because there's also many other maps, whether it's MBTI or even DISC, that can impact that too. And
Hmm.
then just their consciousness as a whole that is going to be unique in itself.
Hmm.
But it's just such a wonderful map, and I've just been exploring it more recently. And even noticing So I know when you do the test, you have obviously the main one, right? For me, that's a 3. Then you have your wing, for me, that's a 4. And then it also shows kind of other areas where it's a little bit higher for you. For me, I think it was like a 7 was fairly high,
Yeah.
and a couple of others. And I also notice when I'm just exploring my own different constructs where I have, a little bit of tension or craving or
Mm.
clinging, they're usually within these different tones,
Yeah.
right? Within these different enneagrams.
Yeah.
And even with the wing, I'm always noticing that, oh, there's that desire for uniqueness, for
Yeah.
specialness, right? Which is the 4. And for you,
Yeah.
it's a 9, right? Or is it
Yeah.
8? I
9.
think we thought it was 7, but then it was 9.
Yeah. I think it
It
changed.
made
I
more
mean, I've got a
sense.
decent amount of both of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just really interesting to see that it's so common that I'll be working with a client, and just from what the constructs and shadows we're working through, you can kind of tell the enneagram. I
Yeah. You
tell
can, if you were
what
to put
they're
them on it, where
yeah,
they would be.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. It's super interesting if someone wants to look into it. Again, do not take it like this is you.
yeah,
That's how you mess yourself up, because there was definitely times where we found out our Enneagram and then we just leaned into it because that's where our mind was at the moment. Like, you can't really help it. If you're at that stage, you can't actually help not doing that. It's better to know the disclaimers than not to know it. But at the end of the day, your mind's going to do what the mind's going to do. And it's going to make an identity and religion out of something, despite being told not to make a religion or identity around it. I mean, look at Buddhism. The Buddha literally said, "I'm not a god. Do not worship me as a god." And you go to some Buddhist countries and they're worshiping him like a god, so
yep.
just what the mind does. But yeah, that's super interesting because
Mm,
it would make sense. Like, oh yeah, look at this guy, this fat geezer who's running a pub. Clearly, he doesn't really mind what other people think about him if he's
just
having a good
chill,
time.
just hanging out,
So he's not
just having
trying
a
to be the
beer.
perfect person. He's not trying
Yeah.
to be unique. Because a lot of people, when they come into personalities or enneagrams, they view it as like the strength. Now, obviously, as an 8, you're like, oh yeah, 8's the strong one. You're like, let's go, you get super hype about it. But it's actually mapping your weaknesses or your blind spot. That's the real humbling
Mm,
thing about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be curious, and it may not arise for you, so, but I wonder what your version of the fat bartender might be.
What's
Like
like a
I'm
less
curious
serious
what
one,
like
or do you mind a serious
yeah,
one?
you could do serious,
Yeah.
but I'd just be curious like what that would show up for you.
My version is like in theory, it would be something like a guy who's maybe a little bit more, or somebody who's a little bit more, how would you say, carefree, effeminate, out there, and not really
Mm,
trying to play the macho game. It doesn't seem like that's too related to me at the
yeah.
moment because, I mean, I Latin dance. I used to wrestle sweaty men, skin on skin contact with jiu-jitsu.
That's right.
You know. So it probably show up in a different way. It doesn't seem to resonate that much for me. But what is resonating a lot for me when you say that is it's almost like this tendency to feel like you're to interpret any kind of behavior that could be interpreted in this way as either being abandoned or being betrayed. Because
Mm,
in one of the big books that I read on Enneagram, like I didn't do an in-depth training or something like this. It's just what we've been noticing from studying it, a lot of self-study and then applying it to clients and stuff, is each Enneagram, it has like a message. Now, this message has tons of projections in it, and obviously there's not like one message which is going to resonate. There's 9 Enneagrams with like a billion people. There's like 7 billion or 9 billion people in the world. But it's something like the lost childhood message is the thing that forms the Enneagram. You can almost think about it like an introject, if you want to look at it this way, is you will not be abandoned, you will not be betrayed. basically.
Mm.
So you can interpret anything where something could be like, even in the realm of possibilities like that, it's like you have an extra sensitivity to that.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Like an extra
Yeah.
sensitivity.
Yeah,
Doesn't
you
that
have
just
an
sum up the
extra
Enneagram?
sensitivity. Yeah, it's just
Like it's
basically having an
actually,
extra sensitivity. Yeah.
yeah. And that's so great because so often the problem with these personality models is first of all, not really personality models, but also we kind of get attached to them. It's
Yeah.
actually just where you're a little bit sensitive towards. Like I am
Yeah,
just
exactly.
sensitive towards achieving and being special.
Yeah.
I'm just a
So it
bit
means
sensitive,
if that
guys.
gets
You know?
taken away from you, it's like it's almost like an extra step your mind has to go through to say, chill, bro, you're okay.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
almost like that's what has to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do
that's
you know
super interesting to talk about.
what was really interesting is I had huge aversion to getting robbed, but not getting killed. Right? This has got a
Okay.
little bit dark. We could put this- Maybe we can put it in. I don't know.
No, it's fine.
But
Yeah. We're putting this
I,
in.
I just noticed, yeah, we'll keep this in. See, we're going to find out where the limits are on
Yeah,
this
we will.
podcast. You know, me and you for an extended period of conversation, we're going to definitely find limits. Anyway, and I was like, why is that? One is objectively worse, but one of them doesn't change the image or the kind of achievement I'm trying to hold, right? Whereas if I'm
So it could be
stolen
like
from,
if you got killed in a robbery, you could be like the protector who didn't give up, or be like the
it wasn't even,
perfect,
it's not
like
even
that.
that. It's like,
See,
it's not
that's my
even like,
Enneagram speaking right now.
no, no, it's just that the killed one is like, that would suck, but I'm not
Yeah.
like worried about it so much,
Okay.
right? Whereas the stealing one, like occasionally creates weird, anxious, like ideas emerging. And it's purely because, well, if my stuff was stolen, it would be really hard to run the business. And what if that like leads to the business failing? And what
Wow.
if that leads to whatever it is, right? That means like I'm
Yeah.
da 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 da, whatever it may be. And so it's purely from that. And it's not like the killing one has any positive thing. It's just like there's not really a
There's no upside.
yeah, there's not really a any anything there. It's just that the stealing one has so much like a weird pull,
Hmm.
right? Weird sensitivity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, which is really interesting to see how we're just creating that because one is objectively worse,
Yeah.
but
That's a really
one
good example.
creates real like worries,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Explore their sensitivity when you explore, but it's also a thing which is so hard to explore because for people that aren't used to this, that may be listening to this, because we're extra sensitive to it. So if it
Yeah,
creates like a stifling effect that I see in people. That's why it's much easier for people when they do calls. It's much easier for them because it's helpful when they have somebody there who's holding that space for them. This is what holding space actually means, you know,
yeah,
when it's done properly. But yeah, when we're extra sensitive to it, it's like we have just a instant reaction to just have aversion to it and try and push it away and not be into it. But it's when you go into it, that's when the liberation is, the liberation of suffering. Whereas you want to look at it from a karmic way or from a psychological way. Um, yeah, it's so funny how we got onto that topic.
yeah. You know, I had it in my curiosities actually, which is interesting, but it just seemed to arise naturally.
Yeah. I wonder how, and then there's the other big personality test in pop culture, which is MBTI, Myers-Briggs personality typings. That's like in a little bit of a different way. That's more about how your mind forms its strengths, but also forms its blind spots as well. So
Yeah,
for me, it's actually feeling more into myself and seeing what I want to do rather than just accommodating the harmony of what everyone else wants to do. Whereas for Cameron, it was the opposite, where he had to learn to include more people into his judging, right? Into his judgment, kind of like, what should I do? Like, what's the kind of thing? So if you use them in tandem, they can actually cover each other's blind spots a bit in the personality typings, but it's still inherently, you know, limiting because we're not as simple as that. But it's still almost like, so for people, so I'm an ENFJ, Cameron's an ENFP. With ENFJ, your primary function is extroverted feeling. And again, it's so easy to get pulled into that, oh, that means the thing that I'm naturally good at. No, it just means the thing that you're naturally more sensitive to. Again, you're naturally more sensitive to how other people are feeling and what could be happening inside of them. Whereas for Cameron is naturally more sensitive to how he's feeling and how that impacts his view on the world moving around.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd mention that because I'm sure a few people would probably know that personality typing. So it's useful to also not make an identity out of that either, because there's a point in this work where you move past your personality. The personality is still there. Like, don't get me wrong, it's still there, but it's not something which is the fulcrum of who you are anymore. And that's actually when you create the most liberation. But when I was a few years ago, when we were in Budapest, when I heard that, I'd be like, but I like Aaron. I like my personality. I don't want to let it go. And it's that attachment which is stopping you from making breakthroughs. That's the funny part.
100%. 100%. And just a little bit of clarity for people. When we're exploring MBTI, because it can be useful too. Number one, goes at Personality Hacker that we were using.
Yeah, Personality Hacker. It's one of the best tests
much
out
better
there.
because it really focuses on the cognitive functions over this like more storyline driven version
astrology version of
yeah,
this is an ENFJ, you know, and
which
it's like,
means that you're this, and this, and it just makes a bunch of assumptions about you. Which is whereas Personality Hacker, because an ENFJ is built of extroverted feeling, introverted intuition,
extroverted sensing, and
extroverted
introverted
sensing,
thinking.
and introverted thinking, right? And it goes kind of in order of what we're most sensitive towards, what we use more as a dominant function. And it builds your model based on the cognitive functions, not this kind of storyline thing. For me, it's extroverted intuition, introverted feeling, extroverted thinking, and introverted sensing. And so if you are exploring it, for sure, use that over like 16 personalities, because otherwise you're just going to get even more storylines than you already will.
Which you'll have to deal with later. Yeah. I mean, that's all that's coming up for me. Is there anything else?
Yeah.
How do we round off on that? I think.
Well, do we even need to do an intro as well? Because
I'll
like
do
we just jumped in. Yeah, you want to do an intro?
I'll do the intro, but I'll do it after. I'll add it to after.
Cool.
Yeah. I guess how we'll round it off as, if you guys have any questions or any topics or anything you would want us to explore on another podcast, then please leave that below. Other than that, this was a fun time. I think you got a lot of useful stuff out of this about how to approach a lot of the big kind of needle movers in the personal development, self-actualization industry, like personality tests, and how to kind of see where your blind spots are. But other than that, thanks for joining.